What remarkably stupid thing are you doing on a consistent basis to screw up your life? That is the question that Jordan Peterson poses to all of us in this next clip. And I'm going to be covering why people don't want to know, what happens when we actually ask ourselves that question, and what we go through when we actually do know the answer to that question. We're in the biblical series, Walking with God, Noah and the Flood. We're at 14 minutes, 29 seconds, an hour, 14 minutes, 29 seconds. I'm Coach Colin, coolest high performance coach in the world. And if you want the absolute best insights to the podcasts and videos you love, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it.
But a huge part of the reason that people fail is because they don't ever set up the criteria for success. And so since success is a very narrow line and very unlikely, the probability that you're going to stumble on it randomly is zero. And so there's a proposition here, and the proposition is, if you actually want something, you can have it. Now the question then would be, well, what do you mean by actually want? And the answer is that you reorient your life in every possible way to make the probability that that will occur as certain as possible. And that's a sacrificial idea, right? It's like, you don't get everything. Obviously. But maybe you can have what you need. And maybe all you have to do to get it is ask. But asking isn't a whim or today's wish. It's like, you have to be deadly serious about it. You have to think, okay, like I'm taking stock of myself. And if I was going to live properly in the world and I was going to set myself up such that being would justify itself in my estimation, and I don't mean as a harsh judge, exactly what is it that I would aim at? Well, one of the things I've found is that in test of this theory, let's say, you could try this. This is a form of prayer, knocking. Sit on your bed one day and ask yourself, what remarkably stupid things am I doing on a regular basis to absolutely screw up my life? And if you actually ask that question, but you have to want to know the answer, right? Because that's actually what asking the question means. It doesn't mean just mouthing the words. It means you have to decide that you want to know. You'll figure that's out so fast it'll make your hair curl. It's as if Jung thought about this. He thought that people had two poles of consciousness, and one was the individual consciousness that we each identify with, and the other was something he called the self, and the self is you might think about it as the divine within. That's close enough approximation. It's the universal part of your consciousness. It's your conscience. That's another way of thinking about it, whatever your conscience is. But it's something that you can consult. It's like the Socratic daemon. Socrates said that the thing that made him different than everyone else in Greece was that he consulted his daemon, his genius. He asked himself how it was that he should conduct himself in the world, and then he did that, whatever it was. He didn't try to force a solution, He didn't try to force a solution selfishly. He asked, I'm going to manifest myself in the best possible manner in the world. I would like to do that. What would that be? Well, you're perfectly capable of thinking. God only knows how. You're perfectly capable of immense feats of imagination and dream and fantasy. It's God only knows how you do all of that. What would happen if you consulted yourself about the best possible outcome for you? You might get an answer. Well, that's what this proposition is.
So, beautifully said by Dr. Peterson as well. Absolutely amazing. Just straight up being honest, I've never listened to these before, and I started listening to them randomly. I started here, but I'm actually going to start at number 1 and start listening to them. Just so much value inside of these lectures. So much. You may already know, but I did not, and I'm learning so much right now. So now, why don't people want to know? So when he asks that question, what stupid things are you doing? Why don't people want to know? Well, he even talks about this. I believe he even mentioned it on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's because it's painful. It's very painful right now if you ask yourself that question and you start answering it, because these are all the things that you do to yourself to keep you in whatever shitty or unfavorable position that you're in right now. It's very painful to realize that the things that you're going through are all set up by you. You know? It's like that whole, you ever seen that Scooby-Doo meme where they're like, let's see who the culprit is. You take off the mask and it's just you. You know? It's hard to really face that, because now you know that all of the blaming and all of the external pointing that you've done, it was all bullshit. It just was. You're making it up. You're finding excuses. That's a painful thing to realize, and that's why people don't want to know. But what happens when we actually ask ourselves that question? We get over the hump of not wanting to know, and now we do want to know, and we ask ourselves the question: what actually happens? What actually takes place when we ask ourselves the question? Well, what I think actually starts happening is our highest self, whatever you want to call it, God, highest self, Jesus, Allah, whatever it is that you believe in, that is the thing that starts answering. It gives us whispers. It's never a loud booming voice when we do this. That's why he says to sit in your room alone in the quiet. You do that and you just ask that question and sit and think about it, and you'll start getting the whispers. You'll start getting the flashes of the things that you do. I really do believe that's your highest self trying to let you know exactly what needs to change. And it's your lowest self, the lowest version of you, the self that thinks everything is just happening to me, that victim mentality self. That's the part of yourself that doesn't want to know. But your highest self, it wants you to know, and it wants you to change the things, because your highest self is your highest self, and it knows that you are capable of achieving that level. It knows that you're capable of going up to the higher echelons of what you could be. It knows already, and it just knows that if you just change these few things, and maybe it's a long list of things, but it knows that if you can get past these things, if you could let these things die and shed away, that you can actually change and become more in its image. Again, you can be like Jesus, God, whatever it is. You'll be more in that image, and you'll be better off because of it. And the people around you will be better off because of it. It just happens. Somebody actually said, they were talking about just black men and women, but I think this goes to all people, that when a man really cleans himself up, like the guy said, like when a man cleans himself up, his woman is automatically blessed. And that's so true. So true. When you clean yourself up, the people around you are automatically blessed because you become a blessing. It's so true. So now, what happens when we actually know the things that we need to change? We actually do ask the question. We hear what needs to change, and now we know. Well, I think what happens then is it's like you feed your soul almost. When you actually know, and you can now sit and think and say, these are the things that need to change. Whatever you believe in, the angels, your highest self, Jesus himself, whatever it is that's around us that we can't see in that realm, they celebrate. They celebrate because they know that you're about to become more like they are. They just celebrate. They get so happy. And you celebrate internally. As much as a gut punch as it might be to figure out that you are the problem and that the things you do need to change, there's a celebration that happens once you know, because you know, and once you map out how you're going to change, there's a celebration. There's a lightness that happens inside of your chest, inside of your heart. And I think it's a worthwhile pursuit. I really do think it is. And I think if we all go to that extent, ask ourselves that question, and start to really, like exactly like he said, act on it. Ask, hear it, and act on it, I think the whole world would be better off. And I think that you 100% have the ability to do this. You don't have to wait. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to buy anything. Just sit in your room and ask yourself that question. Now, you might need some kind of guidance once you realize what the things are. But that will happen once you start putting in the work. Once you start putting in the work, you have no idea how many people want to help you out, but only once you start putting in the work. It's hard for people to want to help someone that doesn't want to help themselves. But when somebody voraciously is trying to help themselves and expand themselves and improve themselves, people come out of the woodwork. Miracles happen. I'm out.